All right, welcome in. It's time for the first official 49ers offseason preview. So much facing this franchise coming off the loss in Super Bowl 58. There's an entire salary cap situation that I'm going to try to explain as simply as possible for you, and an entire age out concern that I think we have to absolutely address because these 49ers have been together for quite some time now. They've gotten really close to winning the Super Bowl several times. I would say 4 times. They had a lead in the NFC Championship game in 2021. They probably would have been favored in that Super Bowl over the Cincinnati Bengals had they not lost to the Rams. Obviously, close to winning in 2019 against the Chiefs. 2022, a little bit of a different story because of the injury early on in that NFC title game at Philadelphia to Brock Purdy. And then you all know what happened on Sunday. So it's been a growing A-list core for the 49ers. They're getting older. The age out concern is obviously going to be present because the NFL is a young man's league, but guys are still under contract for San Francisco. And I think as we saw this year, guys are still very much in their prime. And this is a group that with a little bit better luck would have won the Super Bowl this year. That's how close they were. Efficiency wise, we look at how good they were offensively during the season, and we see that they dropped to number 12 defensively. That's why Steve Wilkes has been fired. If they pair the number one defense of 2022 with D'Amico Ryans with the offense from this year, they almost certainly win it all. Probably go close to undefeated if they kept that number one defense. So the components are still impressive. They're still there, but there's an age out concern that we have to talk about as we discuss the 49ers offseason. Earlier today on the show, I showed you the first look at the 49ers depth chart for this 2024 season. This is what they're building out right now. As you can see, I've got the counter on here. They have 61 roster spots filled. So roughly 30 to go on the 90-man roster. And over the course of the next several weeks, we're going to start to see some resolution to all of this. The update today, they added Ernest Brown IV and Raymond Johnson, a couple of defensive ends who are long shots to make the roster at first glance, but you never know how a player's offseason under Chris Kasarik is going to go. But the 49ers, they're trying to set the table here for the 2024 season by filling up this roster. The crazy thing is that it's already February 15th. That means that the start of the new league year is less than a month away, or almost exactly a month, I would say, from now. Mid-March is when the new league year starts. That's when old contracts that end with this 2023-2024 season officially expire. So that means that's when free agency begins. Some players are being given a head start on free agency, the ones that teams are planning to cut anyway. So you're seeing some cuts like Cody Whitehair. He got cut by the Bears, so he's available to sign now. That's what teams will do if they want to, tip of the cap. It's a extension of courtesy to some veterans who they know they're not going to keep around anyway, so they let them go at this point, so they're free to shop around before the entire wave of free agents hits the market. But by mid-March, things will start to get really, really active. And last year, the 49ers, people didn't think they'd be big money players just because they were close to being up against the cap. They were big money players. They decided to sign Javon Hargrave, who was a productive defensive tackle for them this season, and they hope will continue to be moving forward. I think that, I've talked about it a lot. I think this 49ers team had one truly pronounced statistical weakness, and it was the offensive line and pass protection. I think if there is a bigger splash, that's where it might happen. The problem is that really good offensive linemen, they're not a dime a dozen. It's hard to find good offensive linemen, especially in an era where the edge rushing proliferation and the proliferation of athletic defensive tackles, hell, you go to Chris Jones and Aaron Donald, those kind of guys are outpacing the development of linemen. So teams hold on to linemen if they're good in the league. It's going to be hard to find one there. But the draft, which happens at the end of April, so that's a little over 2 months away. A little bit over 2 months away. I'd say 2.5 months away. I had to look at the calendar again. It's February 15th. All of this is going to be an opportunity for the 49ers to fill up those 30 or so remaining roster spots as they prepare for OTAs, the offseason program, and move forward. They're going to have to wade through different contractual drama. We already have been talking about the Brandon Ayuk situation. He is under contract at $14.2 million on his fifth-year option, but he might hold out because he might want that new deal, sort of Nick Bosa wanted that new deal before his fifth-year option season began. And he did get that new deal. It was very close to the start of the season. It was way after training camp. It was after the preseason. I remember writing a Nick Bosa contract analysis from Pittsburgh this past year. And then Bosa, he had the most pressures out of any player since 2018. So he said that not practicing in that month of July and August did affect him negatively, but he shook it off. And by the end of the season, it was the old Nick Bosa. It was the defensive player of the year that we saw. Even early on, he was generating a ton of pressure. It wasn't like there was a massive drop-off in play, but it might have been a slight slowdown, and he might not have felt this great early in that year. But here's the 49ers cap situation. I have it written down at the bottom of the screen. Because of some of the maneuvers that they executed last season, right before the start of everything, they freed up $40 million in 2024 salary cap space. Now, remember that this team was well up against it last season already. So they needed to free up a little bit of room to operate, but they freed up way more than they needed before week one. They freed up $40 million. How you do that is that you're willing to pay. You convert a base salary to signing bonus, and that signing bonus is amortized into future years for the benefit of the cap or for the purpose of the salary cap. So they did that to a few of their star players right around the time that they signed Nick Bosa. That opened up $40 million, and you could carry over salary cap space that you don't use. So they gave themselves flexibility to spend during the season. The opportunities that popped up were Randy Gregory and Chase Young, defensive ends acquired via trade, but both of those were actually financially inexpensive. So the 49ers, the $40 million turned to $38 million. They paid both of those guys, I think, close to the minimum or at the minimum for the season. Most of the money had already been paid by their former teams through signing bonuses that the former teams were responsible for. So the 49ers were economically efficient, financially sound, and they carried over $38 million out of the $40 million restructured here into 2024. We don't know exactly how big the salary cap is going to be in 2024, but we do estimate, because it's tied to league revenue from the previous season, we do estimate that it's going to rise from the height of $224 million in 2023 to somewhere between $240 and $245 million in 2024. So that could be a $20 million increase in the salary cap. So this is the 49ers strategy right here. I published this several months ago. The same thing still applies. I think this is the simplest real strategy of how the 49ers operate, simplest bullet point list that I've seen online. That was my goal when I made this. But they obviously have a roster that is stacked with star players. Their like 5-step list is the following: acquire and develop A-list players. Obviously, they've done a good job of this. That's why they have so many A-listers right now. It gets more complicated starting at number 2, even though number 1 isn't easy. You've got to draft well, and obviously you have to coach and develop well. But number 2, when you have to pay those A-list players, obviously pay them, but you have to determine who is an A-lister. So the most relevant example right now is Brandon Ayuk. Brandon Ayuk was drafted in 2020 in the first round, and it took him several years to blossom. But I think that I said this at the start of this season. I said this is the time for Brandon Ayuk to prove beyond a reasonable doubt, beyond anything, that he is an A-list player. And he definitely answered the challenge, averaging 18 yards a reception with an insane yards per route run of over 3, behind only Tyreek Hill in this 2023 season. So Brandon Ayuk is an A-lister, just like Nick Bosa before him, just like Deebo Samuel before that, just like the other players, Nick Bosa. Well, I mean, everybody that the 49ers have paid, these guys are A-listers. Brandon Ayuk is now an A-lister, so the 49ers will work toward paying him. The list of A-listers can grow because, as I just mentioned, the salary cap grows every year. So the salary cap went from $224.8 million in 2023 to what we think is going to be somewhere over $240 million in 2024. If it rises to $245 million, that means it's a $20 million increase in the salary cap. So theoretically, with each of these increases, thanks to the skyrocketing league revenue, you can add one more A-lister per season and still fit under the salary cap. Now, of course, by the time that this cycle hits 4 years, 5 years, and we're pretty far down it for the 49ers, of course, contracts are also going to come off the books because contracts are only 5 years long, typically at max length in the NFL, because that's the furthest that you can prorate the signing bonus. I know Mahomes signed a longer deal. They can only prorate the signing bonus over 5 years. So when you have that dynamic, you can theoretically afford to continually pay guys, but you better pick who's worth it. You can't see a B-lister and pay him like an A-lister. You can't see a C-lister and pay him like a B-lister. You can only pay your A-listers, and the 49ers have given out a lot of record contracts. When it comes to the B-listers, when free agency comes, you can let them walk. So will the 49ers let anybody walk this year? Well, we can talk about that in a little bit. They've gotten comp picks in the past through that process when you decide not to pay a player. They're going to benefit from comp picks this season. They let Jimmy Garoppolo walk last year. That's going to be one of their compensatory picks. Mike McGlinchey walked last year. That factored into the compensatory formula. So the 49ers have 11 draft picks coming up because last year they did let some of their B-list players walk. You replenish your B-list core through the draft. You have to draft well to get, or sometimes you get some budget veterans. That's okay too. But you have to draft well to make sure that your team has depth. So it's not just top heavy with star power. While you're drafting, you hope that you could start the developmental process for your next wave of Nick Bosa's, for your next wave of George Kittle's, for your next wave of Brandon Ayuk's, or dare I say your next wave of Brock Purdy's. When you're drafting, you're always taking a swing for the fence. You hope that a guy can develop into an A-lister, but you also want to make sure that your floor there is high. You shoot for the stars. You try to land on the moon. And if you land on the moon while you're shooting for the stars, well, then maybe you'll have a B-lister that can be with you for 4 years, maybe even 5 years, that can perform at the margins because you need a deep football team. All while you're doing that, you want to develop your staff. And the 49ers have done a good job of this. They've developed the coaching staff. They coach coaches. They've gotten compensatory picks through developing their coaching staff. But more importantly than anything, the way that they develop their staff, if they do that right, that coaching staff is going to work with the players. That coaching staff is going to turn draft picks into A-listers. You see so much success for the 49ers in the lower rounds of the draft. That didn't happen overnight. George Kittle showed up in 2017 as a skinnier tight end out of Iowa who hadn't caught many passes in college. And they developed the hell out of him. John Embry was the tight ends coach at the time. And he would fine George every time he ran out of bounds. He'd fine him $10 and said, guys don't want to tackle you. Pay me $10 and shake this habit. Don't run out of bounds. George Kittle never runs out of bounds anymore. George Kittle's one of the yak monsters. It's been huge toward the 49ers' success over the years. So coaching, extremely important for San Francisco, not only to get the compensatory picks, which are so important to replenishing a team on a cost-controlled basis, but also because the coaching takes those draft picks and develops those players. And if the coaching does a good job, then those players have a better chance to develop into superstars. Finally, the cycle restarts. You pick your next A-listers. So it's really a 4-step process, with step 5 being right back to the front. Acquire players that can be stars. And we're going to see a big opportunity for the 49ers to do that acquisition over the next couple months. First, obviously, their $38 million in carryover cap space is going to put them right up. It's going to help this season situation, put them right around $3-4 million above the cap. By the start of the new league year, they've got to be under, so they may have to restructure a couple guys. Maybe they'll cut a couple guys. My top cut candidate would be somebody like Isaiah Oliver, who never really seemed to fit the program, didn't have to change of direction. I know there was a Steve Wilks guy, and obviously Wilks is gone now. After free agency, the 49ers are going to have those 11 draft picks, and the draft is slotted for money, so you can fit under the salary cap with it. It's going to be a predetermined amount depending on where you're picking. So the 49ers, that's the way to really work in the salary cap era. You have to draft well. And throughout it all, you can consider and use this as confidence. Brock Purdy is going to be the franchise rudder. Right now, and I'm going to pull up a cap situation. Let's get this up on the screen. Let's take a look at over the cap. Let's take a look at the 49ers page. And let's see where Brock Purdy factors into this in the longer term. The 2024 49ers on over the cap. OTC. Here you go. So as you see here, the 49ers have a lot of big time cap numbers at the top of their spreadsheet. Trent Williams, $31.5 million. Deebo Samuel, $28.6 million. Eric Armstead, $28.3 million. Fred Warner, $24.5 million. George Kittle, $22 million. Charvarius Ward, $18.4 million. Javon Hargrave, $15.3 million. Nick Bosa, $14.6 million. Christian McCaffrey, $14.1 million. Brandon Ayuk, $14.1 million. Those are all the guys that are above $10 million. Well, Brock Purdy is way down here. I give all of those numbers above $14 million. Brock Purdy's number, meanwhile, is going to be $1 million this year. His cap hit actually increases to just over $1 million. So it's a 14th of Christian McCaffrey's cap number. It is 131st. Like, you have to multiply by 30, literally multiply by over 30 to get Trent Williams' cap number. Brock Purdy's cap number is small right now, while these other ones are growing. If we go to 2025, you could see the top heaviness increasing even more. Trent Williams goes up to $34.1 million. Somebody like Christian McCaffrey stays the same, but Bosa goes up to $20.5 million. Hargrave goes up to $26.6 million. I mean, Charvarius Ward is a nullified contract at this point. He's going to have dead money accelerating. And he gets more and more top heavy and less efficient as you go. And you realize that by this year, 2025, the 49ers are probably going to have to pay Brock Purdy, especially if he continues playing as one of the best quarterbacks in football. He's not eligible for it yet, but Brock Purdy is going to be eligible for that extension next season. When that happens, inevitably, it's going to be harder to keep the contracts afloat around him. That's when you're really going to have to start to get creative. And that's when you're going to have to make a shift that the New England Patriots had to make surrounding Tom Brady. And Brady was taking discounts there, especially over the back half of his career. That helped the Patriots a lot. But they realized that the quarterback has to be the centerpiece and he has to elevate everyone around him. The good news for the 49ers is that Brock Purdy has already elevated everyone around him. He is that type of player. But the drafting is going to have to continue to be good. The player acquisitions are going to have to continue to be good. Purdy, meanwhile, is going to be in the middle. He's going to be the rudder. Right now, he's the rudder because you've got so many guys making over $14 million on the cap this year, cap hit wise. And Purdy is the inexpensive quarterback. That's the fulcrum of it all. At $1 million, much, much less. But in the future, those roles are going to reverse. And the 49ers are going to have him expensive, and they're going to try to fill the roster around Brock Purdy. That's the definition of a franchise quarterback. Somebody that you're willing to pay and then build around. Does that mean that they're just going to have a bunch of no-names around Brock Purdy? No. Because again, you go back to the formula, and I hope that I explained this well. The formula is reliant on the salary cap growing every single season. Number two, you could pay more A-listers as the salary cap grows. The problem is Purdy's going to make exceptional money. The quarterback market's up in the 60 millions now. I don't know what he's going to make, but he's going to make such exceptional money that it will force you to stop surfing the wave that the 49ers are surfing now, and they're going to have to make some painful decisions. Now, the team this year, this offseason, might have to make some painful decisions. It's not easy to build these things. I will go back to what I think the 49ers absolutely have to do this offseason. When I look at the preview for the next few months, order of business, there are two top orders of business. Get the defense back to a top 3 unit. They slipped from number 1 to number 12. Okay, so they fired Steve Wilkes. That needed to happen. I think they were planning to let go of Steve Wilkes even if they won the Super Bowl. It might have been a little bit more of a mutual parting. The pairing just didn't work, right? It just didn't work. The defense slipped from 1 to 12. The run defense from 2 to 26. Not good, even though you had more talent. Okay, boom. There's one problem that the 49ers are now going to try to solve through the hiring of a new defensive coordinator. I'm not sure it's going to be. We can talk a little bit more about that later. 2, the San Francisco 49ers need to invest in their offensive line. This is something I've been saying since 2019, really. 2019, Jimmy Garoppolo Super Bowl. He took a lot of heat, but that was the number 26 ranked offensive line by pass block win rate. This one isn't much better. This 2023 season is number 25 ranked offensive line. They haven't been able to protect playing the same team in the Super Bowl. They haven't been able to protect against the Chiefs at crunch time. The 49ers' best offensive line in the Shanahan era was 2021. It's when they had Alex Mack at center. But then they saw injuries on the right side to Mike McGlinchey, and that forced it forced Tom Compton to start on the right side, not Colton McKivitz. And basically, the 49ers lost because of that to the Rams. They didn't have the firepower up front. So when you look at the 49ers, and I know I've shared this already a couple times today, but it is worth sharing again just because it is such a staggering graphic, and it's one that I think firmly illustrates the dynamics at play. It's also one that's really hard to fit on the whole screen, but look at where Purdy's dot is. He's the most efficient quarterback in football way up here, but he also is protected worse than all of these other QBs that are all over here. So how do the 49ers protect Purdy better? The answer is complicated, but the answer lies in finding talent outside of Trent Williams for this offensive line, either through your 11 draft picks, and we'll talk about that draft in the future, or through players who are cut, through players that you can develop. Even you could develop veterans, you can retrain veterans. 49ers have done this. It's not easy. Again, these linemen don't grow on trees, but you would ideally like Brock Purdy's dot to be further this way, moving to the right. And if that dot happens, if the offensive line does protect them better, it scores higher, it's very likely the line will be a diagonal going this way. Purdy will be also rising in efficiency as time goes by. Will it be easy? No. Will it be worth it? Yes, if the 49ers can get that done. I'm not in a position to be talking about specific names right now. I just got done covering a team that went all the way to the Super Bowl. I'm going to start watching all the tape of the draft prospects. I'm going to start tomorrow. I have an article talking about the 49ers pending unrestricted free agents. Then I'm going to start looking at the league-wide list of pending unrestricted free agents. And in less than a month, it's going to be absolute go time when we start talking about free agency. Depending on what the 49ers get or don't get in free agency, then we're going to start talking about those 11 draft picks. Throughout it all, we're going to talk about the salary cap, and that $38 million of carryover has the 49ers in actually a decent financial position this year. But the reason that I brought up the 2025 season, which is right here, let's get this up on the screen. The reason that I brought up this 2025 season is because it's going to get harder. You can see the very top heavy cap hits. You always want to reinfuse your roster with youth, with that's financially sustainable because these rookie contracts are cheaper. And just again, it's a young man's sport. You want to make sure that the talent half of this football team is geared toward being able to compete with these young, hungry up and comers. For that reason, I think that the 11 draft picks this year are very, very crucial. I think that the fact that you have your franchise rudder in Brock Purdy is extremely, extremely crucial. And I think that you've got to surf the wave of the salary cap. So the 49ers have done so far. I don't think the age out concern is here yet. Bill Walsh would always or often say, it's better to let go of a player a year too early than a year too late. I don't think we're at that juncture yet with any of the 49ers star core. I think that they could keep on pressing forward, pedal to the metal, realize that if they improve certain levels of their operation, which to me, the biggest one is the offensive line, then this team can be in a really, really damn good spot. So anyway, that's my thing. And you've got to coach your coaches too to make sure that everything works as it is intended to work. Let's move this to a 49ers Q&A. How's everybody doing? This guy seems to listen to me. He'd rather get our linebackers coach as a defensive coordinator who understands the front end and the secondary. That's why Saleh was so good. That's why D'Amico Ryans was so good, because they tied Russian coverage together. Linebackers are right at the middle. Meanwhile, the DB guy, Steve Wilks, not so good. Didn't work out nearly as well for Steve Wilks with the 49ers. I thought that he did some good stuff with the back end, but it's about tying the Russian coverage together, which is why I'm looking at linebacker-oriented minds. And I wouldn't be surprised if it's a younger guy. Would not be surprised at all. Any chance that Joey Bosa signs with the 49ers? Well, the Chargers are something like $45 million over the cap. So they would have to jettison Joey Bosa. They have to cut him as a cap casualty. And I know they got a new regime in there, but I don't know what the hell they're thinking. So I can't look into their brains to see what's going to happen on that front. But if Joey Bosa does become a cap casualty, yes, the 49ers will look into it. They're looking into signing Chase Young. They definitely want to bring back Chase Young. Nick Bosa, that was his quote the other day, and he said that he thought that he spoke for the brain trust for John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan. And if they can get the right price on Chase Young, heck yeah, you do it. If you can get the right price on Joey Bosa, heck yeah, you do it. Go back to my theory about surfing the salary cap wave. This thing increases every year. If you're a cash-rich team that's able to restructure people, do things the right way, then you can add an A-lister every season. They added Javon Hargrave last year. We'll see who becomes available this time around. No, you cannot get a hint of who the jersey is until the 49ers win the Super Bowl. We've discussed this before. We've been down this road, guys. It's not my fault they didn't win the Super Bowl. I just can't show you the jersey. It will be a glorious day when we could finally do it. This team has been through so many scars over the course of the past 4 years, but I think that it's fuel to the fire. I think it can make them stronger. I don't think that they're abandoning ship or anything like that. I think that they're going full speed ahead, as they should, with a chance for me to flip that jersey around for you next season. What I think about Jalen Moore starting, I think what we've seen from Jalen Moore so far is that he's a backup caliber player. I think that the 49ers need to upgrade the front end of their line. I think maybe a guard, but I think they've decided he's a tackle. Colton McKivitz, maybe they move him in the guard. The right side was just weak this year. It just was. And they benched Burford and they went with Feliciano. John Feliciano got hurt, went back to Burford. Burford had the blown assignment. Let's see what the 49ers do over the course of this offseason. It's like you're stealing my ideas. He asks, do you think the 49ers will look into Aaron Curry, linebacker coach from Pittsburgh? Player and a coach under Pete Carroll. He's a linebacker. Yeah, he fits kind of the profile that we've seen from Robert Saleh and D'Amico Ryans, that linebacker profile. So I think this definitely could be something to watch, or at least that kind of prototype, that kind of mold for the 49ers at defensive coordinator. How much cap space will the 49ers have with the rollover of $38 million? They're about, well, we don't know what the cap is yet, but if it's $242 million, they're about $3 million over right now. So restructures over the next few weeks or right before the start of the new league year, and only the top 51 count in the offseason. So there's enough room for them to add another big name with the cap increasing, and we'll see who they add. We'll see if the 49ers feel the need to get over the hump with another big signing, or if they feel like what they have right now is enough. But they absolutely have to coach their coaches. There's already been a brain drain, right? Adam Peters has left. I would expect that the combine, they're going to name either Tariq Ahmad or RJ Gillen as the assistant general manager to replace Adam Peters. Gillen is the director of pro scouting. Ahmad is the director of college scouting. So you lose that. It's obviously not the coach realm, but it's part of the front office, and the coaches and the scouting department have really gotten along. Then you look at the coaches that you've lost. Anthony Lynn, run game coordinator. Clint Kubiak, pass game coordinator. And Anthony Lynn didn't have that exact title. Other guys were coordinating the run game, but he was an assistant head coach. You've lost Daryl Tapp, an assistant D-line coach. You've lost James Craig, the assistant O-line coach. You've picked up a new assistant O-line coach. They brought him in today. They got him from the Raiders. You are going to make more coaching staff hires. You're obviously going to shuffle around the front office. It's about a culture and it's about an organization. And the 49ers have built a strong culture, strong organization. So they believe that this thing can sustain itself moving forward if they coach their coaches and coach their own executives. Got some water today. I was at Sam's. By the way, why don't we take a little look at San Francisco today? We could see my buddies Oliver and Tor swimming. Aquatic Park in San Francisco on a beautiful day. And you will see, well, you're going to see all three of them. That's Steve swimming behind them. I had already gotten out of the water. And here Oliver and Tor are going. They're coming back in. They're coming back into the Dolphin Club. What a shot, right? I think that's Tor in front, Oliver right behind him. This is the path that I swim every day. I'm going to have somebody take some video of me so I can show you swimming. But then you could see just it wasn't like spectacularly sunny, but there were blue skies. There was good visibility. And there you have a beautiful look at this city that we all love, San Francisco. Ghirardelli Square off to the right. That's the Cannery is the building right in the middle. And then you could look down on the Dolphin Club at the piers of the Dolphin Club. Isn't that something? As we take, there's Ghirardelli Square. They lit up the Ghirardelli Square sign, which you might be able to see there in red and gold before the Super Bowl. There's the Golden Gate Bridge. I think I'm going to be able to see Tor and Oliver again coming in. That's a nice little break. Maybe Alex on his paddleboard. I don't think Alex was out on his paddleboard. So the Dolphin Club is right on the water. It's been there since the 1870s. It's a really cool spot. We've got this view. And yes, the water is cold at this point of the year, but it's really good for you. So this is my 32-minute intermission of the show. We could talk about the 49ers offseason preview while we fly around. When we fly around Aquatic Park. I like to give you different angles of the city. But here we go. Back again. And you will see both of these guys. I believe that's Tor right there. Look at him. He's motoring. He's motoring. He's headed toward the finish line. That's the home stretch. When you're doing this big loop all the way down to the marina, around into Aquatic Park, and then Dolphin Club is straight ahead. It's the white building with the blue trim. I mean, you're tired at this point. Then you make it all the way back to the pier and you see what it looks like. That's the Dolphin Club. Anyway, back to the 49ers offseason preview. I needed a little bit of a break. It's been a long day. I've been working. I have the 49ers top unrestricted free agents piece coming out tomorrow. That's going to be a big one. That's going to be an important one to watch. I just looked up the Warriors score. They won by 3. They scored 84 points in the first half. That was cool on the Warriors' part. We have the salary list out, but I prepared this for you. I think this is something that you absolutely are going to want to check out. This is the 49ers depth chart as it stands right now. Once that first wave of free agency ends and we start to have a better idea of what they're going to do at every which spot, I'm going to start to divide this into a 53-man roster projection, but right now, not yet. I just put that note at the bottom. It's down here. One player highlighted in yellow is Jawan Jennings. He's a restricted free agent. Restricted free agency means the 49ers are going to have a lot easier time keeping him than an unrestricted free agent because they can match an offer. They tender Jawan Jennings a certain amount of money. And if they decide not to match a higher offer from another team, if they tender him at a first or second round level, 49ers can get a draft pick back. So they get a right of first refusal plus a draft pick if they decide not to keep Jennings. That depends on what they offer him. First round tender will probably be worth about $6 million. Second round tender about $4 million, and then the right of first refusal tender is like 2.5. That's cheaper. You don't get a draft pick if he goes elsewhere. But Jawan Jennings is such an important part of this football team. I heard somebody talking the other day. The 49ers need to change their culture. They need to change their mentality. Like, no, they don't. You double down on this as long as you need to. As long as these guys are playing at the level that we saw over the course of this entire season, number one offense, and obviously you get rid of what's not working. So you get rid of Steve Wilkes because he dragged down that defense to number 12. But if you can get the defense and the offense both performing at a top 5 level, then you're going to have a better shot to win the Super Bowl than anybody. And ultimately, you've just got to kick the door down once January and February roll around, February specifically. The culture has been awesome for the 49ers. The vibe has been great. We talk about how sustainably they've built a winner. But we also have to talk about that, ultimately you need a little bit of luck and you want to reduce the margin of luck that you need to win in the Super Bowl. The 49ers way of reducing that margin of luck, I think the best way forward to do that is to fix the pass protection for Brock Purdy. I cannot get over this right here. Purdy damn far left, at least amongst the good quarterbacks. Boy, the very far left, but so much more efficient. How much better can Brock Purdy be after not just an offseason, but if you can find a way to fortify the offensive line in front of him? And the 49ers have tried to fortify the O-line, and they've done a decent job, and it's not this black or white thing. They re-signed Trent Williams. They signed Alex Mack, who's retired, obviously. They drafted Aaron Banks. Mike McGlinchey was a first-round pick. I go down the list. They got to do more, though. The offensive line is 5 positions, and the right side of it right now is weaker than they would like it to be. Okay, I'm going back to the Q&A. This is awesome. Thank you, Glow. Thanks for all your hard work. Your logical and rational takes have made me a smarter fan. Looking forward to your all-season content. You're a subscriber to The Athletic because of me. That is really cool. Well, I know we have a lot of good stuff right now up on The Athletic, and there's a good piece coming tomorrow that I hope everybody can check out. But, speaking of subscribing to The Athletic, here you go. We wrote on Steve Wilkes, why they parted ways. They fired Steve Wilkes yesterday. A big article that I wrote is right here. And thank you so much, Glow. Appreciate that again. This is 49ers pack their bags, believing that they'll be ready for the steep climb ahead. I talk about that wall in the 49ers locker room. It won't be easy, but it will be worth it. You just have to keep on chopping wood. You have to identify what a weakness of the team was, and you have to try to hammer home that weakness to the point where it becomes a strength. And that's how you get better. That's how you return and win things. Obviously, the aging out factor is something that, because the 49ers have been around for a while at this point, especially in NFL years, something that you have to consider. But think of their core. Deebo Samuel still delivering his best football. That game against Philadelphia this year was something else. George Kittle seemed to have found a little bit of a fountain of youth. He didn't finish strong. Might have still been dealing with that toe issue over the course of the Super Bowl. But Trent Williams, still the top tackle in football on the left side. Obviously, Brock Purdy, his prime is still in front of him at age 24. Brandon Ayuk, I think his prime is still in front of him as he's rising up through the ranks of wide receivers. He's an elite pro, all pro kind of guy. You're going to have to pay him in all likelihood this offseason to keep things going smoothly. Nick Bosa, we might still see him get better. Fred Warner. I mean, all these guys, Warner a bit older than Bosa, obviously. This is such a talented core of star players. 49ers fans should not take this for granted. Hold on to this while you can, because these guys are really damn good. And I think that this year, I looked at the defense played better in the Super Bowl than it had before. Still gave it up at the end, though. But this year you looked at the pass protection breakdowns. That goes back to the offensive line, something I've been talking about since 2019. I thought on that night in 2019 or 2021 when they signed Trent Williams and signed Alex Mack, I thought, okay, This is the type of investment that could push the 49ers over the top. They just need a little bit more of that type of investment. And I think it should be coming this offseason. So you look at the line, you look at repairing the defense, getting it back to elite level now that Steve Wilks is gone. You combine both of those things because you have your quarterback, you have Brock Purdy, you can become the Super Bowl champion if you're the 49ers. Anyway, thank you. That is some of my work up on The Athletic. Oh, wow. I have 2 Curtis Robinsons on my spreadsheet. Why don't we fix it? I do. So that puts us down to 60 players. That means the 49ers have exactly 30 spots open right now. No, I don't think you trade Deebo Samuel. It would be an extremely high amount of dead money. Somebody's asking, trade Deebo. Let me explain to you why that wouldn't be possible or feasible. Let's put it that way. It'd be possible. I don't think it'd be feasible. All right. So here you go. Say that you traded Deebo Samuel in the year 2024. That would incur $26.5 million in dead money. You've already paid out a massive signing bonus and restructured him at least once, maybe twice. It'd be 20. I mean, his cap hit is 28.6 million. The dead money would be 26.5 million. It barely, I mean, you'd save $2 million by trading him. Actually, no, you'd save 6. So yeah, you'd save 6 because there would be a little bit more of one of these pieces of base salary would go to savings. But still, it would cost $21.8 million to trade him and $28.6 million to keep him. If you're only saving $6 million through a Deebo Samuel trade, I don't think the juice there is worth the squeeze. And very unpopular, and you'd be getting worse. Guys, the 49ers are right there. If a ball doesn't bounce off Darrell Luter Jr.'s calf, we're talking about them being Super Bowl champions, and nobody's bringing up trading Deebo Samuel. Don't determine whether or not to trade Deebo Samuel based on whether or not a ball hits off of Darrell Luter Jr.'s calf when he isn't looking. Right? Like it's one of those things where all any team could do is try to put itself in the best possible position with as many good players as possible in the season to be ready for February, and then let the chips fall where they may. Sometimes it's going to work out in your favor. Sometimes it's not. Unfortunately, you don't get a 7-game series. You only get 2 Super Bowls in a total of 4 years for the 49ers here. And you got to hope that one of them works out. None of them worked out. So you have to try to get 3 Super Bowl appearances in 5 years now. That's the next goal. And the best chance to get 3 in 5 years is because these guys haven't aged out of their primes yet. Get these guys back together, fix the necessary areas of weakness, and go back for it next year. I don't think Deebo Samuel's a regressing player. I don't think we've seen a sign of him being a regressing player. Do you think he was regressing when you watched him in Philadelphia this year? That looked like regression to you? It didn't look like regression to me. Yeah, he got hurt in the postseason, but he was getting hurt even as a younger player this year. So I think when he is healthy, when he is operating at 100%, I haven't seen a sign of Deebo Samuel being a regressing player yet. I don't know who the 49ers are going to take as their defensive coordinator. My prototype would be somebody like Aaron Curry, linebacker coach, somebody like that, younger mind. 49ers, they can coach their coaches. That's what Bill Walsh used to do. Spirit of abundance, coach your coaches. Don't be mad when they go and take a job somewhere else because you're fostering a culture and an environment where they're learning, where they're hungry, where they want to advance. Be that beacon. Be coaches you. Be coaches you if you're the 49ers, the coach university. That's what you want. That's what I think the 49ers had created and have created to a certain extent. With Steve Wilks, they ran out of guys who they thought would be ready to be play callers immediately. And because of that, they had to go outside. They went outside, and I think they got a bit greedy. They went, they thought they could improve certain aspects of how they covered by getting a coverage guy instead of a linebacker. But they thought that their system would be strong enough to kind of dictate how things went. They didn't let Wilks bring any assistance. It ended up being just a little bit of a disjointed mess. The defense dropped from 1 to 12. I talked about it all year. I talked about the poor run defense, the bad defense. It's funny, like people are like, oh, you never criticize the 49ers. Well, you just aren't listening because the first person to criticize their run defense was me. What happened 3 months later? They fired Steve Wilkes because they weren't good enough at run defense. So you just have to look at this in a regression or progression standpoint. And the offense progressed this past year. They went from number 4 in 2022 to number 1 in 2023. And the defense went from 1 to 12. And the 49ers now, with that defensive coordinator search, want to bring that defense back up to a good spot. Pop quiz. Why would the 49ers, what percentage of snaps did Joe Montana and Steve Young take from the shotgun? I'm going to go out on a limb and I'm going to say 0. Am I correct? 0% of snaps from the shotgun. I don't ever remember Joe Montana or Steve Young taking a snap from the shotgun. We do expect Dre Greenlaw to be back next season. The good news on that front is that he underwent successful Achilles surgery today. He will make a recovery. Now we'll see how quick he is when he comes back. I said this earlier. Dre Greenlaw is only 26, which is a big deal because if he were 28, that's when Navarro Bowman tore his Achilles when he was 28 years old. If Greenlaw were 28 years old right now, 29, 30, it'd be a whole lot harder to come back fully explosive from the Achilles. But as an athlete who is still rising toward his prime, and the male athletic prime is typically around age 28, Dre Greenlaw is, I think, if it was going to pop at some point, it's better that Achilles ruptured at age 26 than later on. Would have been even better 24 than later on, but at least he got paid once. He's a second contract guy. Didn't get a massive second contract, but it's big enough. I think it was $7 or $8 million a year. So Dre Greenlaw is a player who it might have happened just in the nick of time for him to be able to recover from this at close to full speed. It's going to be really hard. An injury like this did really derail Navarro Bowman's career. But once again, Bowman was 2 years older than Dre Greenlaw is right now. Yeah, you hope that they re-sign Jennings. Make sure you put a hyphen there, because if you say resign without the hyphen, you're saying that you hope that they force Jennings to quit. He is worth whatever they're going to need to pay him this year, because it's not going to be all that much as a restricted free agent. He will be worth that. I think Juwan Jennings will certainly be back, but make sure you put, I hope they re-sign Juwan Jennings. Here, this is helping you out for the future. Re-sign. You're going to want this, because if you don't put that hyphen, then it means the opposite. I want them to resign Jennings. That means like resign from being president. You don't want that, or resign from being coach. You want them to re-sign Juwan Jennings. 100. How much is Brandon Ayuk's next contract worth? Well, what was Debo at? Debo was at, 19, I think, $1 million a year. Brandon Ayuk will be around 20, maybe a little bit more. I mean, there's inflation with these things, just like there is with everything over the course of time. Ayuk is more of a prototypical receiver, an ex-receiver than Debo Samuel, who's more of a bulldog and a hybrid. And I mean, Debo is Debo. He's an awesome player, but he's uniquely Debo. Brandon Ayuk is more of an ex-receiver, separator, good blocker. Still remember that block in week 1. We blocked 2 guys 15 yards apart. 4 seconds, 15 yards apart, 2 guys. First, he blocked, who was it? He was blocking one of the edge rushers for the Steelers. So he took out the edge rusher, and then DeMonte Casey, who was one of their defensive backs, took him out 15 yards downfield, pancaked him. That was so impressive. Brandon Ayuk has earned his worth. Let's put it that way. Burford was not actually drafted in 2022. Burford is a second year, or was a second year player. McKivitz was drafted in 2020. Burford in 2022. Are the 49ers able to trade him? I don't know how great his trade value would be. He wasn't very good this year. Feliciano, you would have to re-sign. Feliciano had a 1-year deal. I don't think the 49ers are thrilled that Feliciano put Burford on blast on social media. If you go into the 49ers locker room, they have signs up there that say protect the team, protect the team. Those are very prominent signs. And that means you don't go on social media and imply that a certain missed block was a teammate's fault. That being said, Feliciano, you're not going to say no to affordable offensive linemen on a team that I think needs efficiency along the offensive line. And I thought that Feliciano did a good job this year. Was the number 4 run blocker by PFF ever since entering the 49ers lineup. Brock did not let anyone down when it mattered most, says Chasing Bay. He drove the team downfield in overtime. Didn't fumble, didn't get intercepted. I mean, yeah, Purdy was awesome. And I think Purdy would have thrown a touchdown had Burford not missed that block. So it's too bad for the 49ers. And that's just how it works at the highest levels of things. Like you're either going to go home really happy or you're going to be completely devastated. And it was the latter for the 49ers. This is a good point from Jeff. For a team full of stars, 49ers do seem remarkably ego-free and one for all. And that's why you got to maintain the culture. Like all this talk about, oh, they got to change something. No, they don't. Trust me here. You take what you have and you improve on it. You don't shake things up. You don't take what's so good and derail it. You know, the 49ers did that back in 2014. They did that at the end of the Harbaugh era. They're really close. Instead of improving, they tore it down. And it did not work out for them. I appreciate this. If you weren't a Niner fan, that Super Bowl would have been top 5 all time. Unfortunately, you are a 49ers fan, and it wasn't top 5 all time for you. I understand. It was a heartbreaking loss for San Francisco. No, Alfredo Gutierrez is not going to be on the team next year. His international exception after 3 years, I think it was 3 years long, has run out. So he would never on track to start. He's the international exception player. They got Alfredo Gutierrez's college teammate from Mexico, Isaac Alarcon. Alfredo was the right tackle at Monterrey in college. That's a city in Mexico. And Alarcon was the left tackle. Alarcon is going to be with the 49ers this next season, not Alfredo. He'll be their international exception. Yeah, we got somebody wanting the 49ers to pick up Justin Fields. I'd say that Brock Purdy is probably 10 times the quarterback of Justin Fields. Definitely has delivered 10 times the efficiency of Justin Fields. So, no, don't worry. Justin Fields not going to be walking through that door anytime soon. Who are the 49ers likely going to replace along the offensive line? Well, that right guard position, I think you really need an upgrade there. It's the right side. The right side's where you need an upgrade. The left side is where you have Trent Williams and Aaron Banks, and I thought they did a good job in tandem. Banks gave up a little too much in the pass protection realm late in that Super Bowl, gave up 5 pressures, but it's the right side that you really should be zeroed in and focusing on. Brandon Allen. We have somebody who thinks that's the Brandon Allen jersey. Same number, but that's about it. What about all the missed holding? Bosa was not lying. There was missed holding. And I think that it's frustrating to the 49ers because the Chiefs were the most penalized team in the NFL for holding all season. And then there was 0 holding calls. We've seen some. And then there was that one on Trent Williams early that nullified a great Brock Purdy crossfield throw to George Kittle. So Kyle Shanahan at that point told the officials, hey, yeah, fine. You're going to call ticky-tack hold. I get it. Just call it the other way. And they didn't. Kansas City did not get called for offensive holding in Super Bowl 54. I don't think they've gotten called for offensive holding in any of their 3 Super Bowl wins. They did get called for offensive holding in their Super Bowl loss, Super Bowl 55. And that was an ugly game. They were overrun as an offensive line, and they lost to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So, I mean, they're seeing how much they can get away with. And to their credit, they've gotten a crew with Bill Vinovich that likes to let them play twice. The problem is the 49ers have a gripe because they didn't let them play. They didn't let Brock Purdy play when they called Trent Williams on that hold in the first half. It's funny because so many people talk about luck and the ladybug and obviously Brandon Ayuk's catch, but the 49ers were one of the less lucky teams in recent seasons. Number 69 out of 80 teams as far as the luck factor went when you measure some of these things since 2018, where the Chiefs were the luckiest team. So the ladybug helped the 49ers with the Ayuk catch, but that's all factored into these luck ratings. The 49ers still ranked number 69 out of 80. I don't think that firing Steve Wilkes is a bad look. I think it's a good look. I think it shows that Kyle Shanahan can recognize when he made a mistake. I don't think hiring Wilkes helped either of those two guys. I don't think that he fit into the system, and it didn't both ways didn't work out. And when your defense slides from number 1 before Wilkes, number 12 after he's through with it, you should be making a move sooner rather than later. And Shanahan did that, and I think that makes him look good. Why would the 49ers want to get a new kicker? Jake Moody just made 250-plus yarders in the Super Bowl. He had one block. That's not a miss. A block is not it obviously doesn't go through, but it's not like he was pushing it left, pushing it right. He made 2 unbelievably clutch kicks of over 50 yards. He held the Super Bowl record for about 30 minutes or so until his counterpart, Harrison Butker, kicked the longer one. But then we saw Moody kick another 50-plus yarder. I think they got a good kicker in him, and I thought that the Super Bowl really lent some credence to that. Defense was good in the postseason. Are you kidding me? Did you watch the postseason, man? You see the defense give up 148 rushing yards on 7 a carry in one half against the Lions? Did you see the defense struggle against the Green Bay Packers at key junctures, like the 51-yard run to Aaron Jones? Defense was sketchy at best. I don't think the 49ers played their best ball in the postseason, that's for sure. But, yeah, we can't even say that the defense was – the defense was historically bad in the first half of the Lions game. There's a reason why the 49ers were down 17, and the offense had to make that comeback in the second half. This is also not true. They did not shut out Mahomes in the first half. If they would have shut him out, they would have won the game. They gave up that field goal toward the end of the first half. So, and then they gave up a whole lot more in the second half. They were better in the Super Bowl. I agree with you. But let's not pretend that the defense was playing at a high level for the 49ers over the course of the playoffs. Run defense was really, really bad. We have run defense straight trash here from James Collins. That's a good description. It was. What Wilkes did is he was running a lot of Fred Warner in coverage deep downfield. He was abandoning in the box. Wilkes' defenses have never been great against the run. 49ers slid too much. They went from number 2 to number 26 against the run. So I'm not sure if it was supposed to be what Kyle Shanahan got mad about on that last drive was soft coverage, or if he was getting upset about a potential zero blitz. It seemed like there was a lot of extremes from Steve Wilkes. It seemed like he would blitz everybody, or he would sit back and you would let the 49ers get picked apart. The front and the coverage never seemed unified to the point where they were consistently swarming. And I think that was the big problem. I just don't think that the 49ers defense maximized the talent. I think that Steve Wilks saw the game through a different lens than the 49ers wanted him to see the game. And Shanahan said it came down to the linebackers. And that's why I think that the next defensive coordinator is going to be very, very tied to what the linebackers are seeing. They made Wilks move down from the booth to the field so you would communicate more with the linebackers. Kansas City is indeed on the schedule next season. It will be interesting, but the bigger deal is who the 49ers, if they make it, play in February next year. I look at it like the 93 49ers. They had lost to the New York Giants in 90 in the NFC Championship game, the Dallas Cowboys in 92, again to the Cowboys in 93. It got to the point where Carmen Policy, one of their executives, said, if we lose to Dallas again, we die. Well, if the 49ers lose to Kansas City again, they might die. This version of them, that's for sure. So what did the 49ers do from 93 to 94? They didn't blow it up. They didn't wave the white flag. They went and stocked up. That was the year they got Ken Norton Jr. and Deion Sanders. I think the 49ers version of Norton and Deion this year is stocking up on the offensive line. That salary cap is growing. I've shown you how you can surf the salary cap. I've shown you how you can add to the football team. I think that's what the 49ers are going to try to do this offseason. I think there's going to be a lot of hype when they do actually do it. I think people are going to be really excited. I think they're going to be adding. I think that they're going to be consolidating around their core. They're going to dig in. I'm going to say, okay, we love this core of players. They made us such a great team last year. We couldn't get over the hump. We obviously didn't get lucky. There was a significant degree of bad luck for the 49ers in the Super Bowl, but that just means they need to push more of their chips into the weaknesses to lower the margin necessary for luck. I agree with this. Defense was a C plus at best during this season. These are just rumors with Brandon Staley. I find it really interesting because he runs a 3-4. He's made Joey Bosa stand up before and cover. I know Joey doesn't like that. I think Nick especially wouldn't like that. I think Nick is going to have some input here, as he should. I think it's going to be more of a 4-3 linebacker mind. So there are rumors, but until that kind of rumor becomes legitimized, you got to realize that the schematics here are different and that the 49ers just kind of failed and fired a defensive coordinator that was trying to bring significant changes, yet still keep the 4-3. That would be an even bigger change, right? He was trying to change the coverages, Steve Wilks was. This would Brandon Staley, well, he had a really good season coordinating the Rams in 2020. I get it, but it would be a pretty big undertaking to move this to a 3-4. And I think that the 49ers might be entrenched in what they're doing with edge rushers so far, especially with Chris Kasarik on the staff. Yep, Brandon Staley is more of a Vic Fangio tree. They didn't hire Fangio last year, and I think that a big reason they didn't hire Fangio is because they couldn't schematically get on the same page. He was more of a 4-3 guy. Well, to the victors go the spoils. They are giving Nick Allegretti praise for playing with a torn UCL, but yes, the 49ers did have a pair of players playing with a torn thumb ligament. That was Javon Hargrave, and a torn meniscus. That was Eric Armstead. That's football. You go out there and you got to gut it out, tough it out. Now the 49ers have a chance to heal over the course of the offseason. Hopefully that helps the narrative to be a little bit more sane around Eric Armstead and Hargrave. Both of these guys were battling it out. Armstead, he got hurt with that meniscus against the Eagles. He didn't think he was going to come back and play this year. He came back and he played with a vengeance. He played really, really well down the stretch. I think Hufanga will be healthy next year. I talked to him and he was upbeat in that locker room because he didn't have to play and go through the pain of defeat after actually playing against the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. I mean, obviously he was sad and everything, but I got to talk to him and it seems like he's doing well in his recovery. Again, it was one of the more visceral scenes in that locker room. I've told the story a few times already. I'm just doing my best covering it for you, bringing the emotions and telling you about what exactly happened, guys that I talked to. And, but Hufanga, because he hadn't played in the game, I think was able to take it a little bit more in stride. And we did talk a little bit, and and he thinks the future is very bright. Let's just put it that way. It will be a Hufanga contract year. Big season for Talanoa. Russell thinks that Hufanga and Jair Brown are going to be special. My question is, do they try to bring back Deshaun Gibson for one more year just because Hufanga is still recovering and Jair Brown is going to be in his second year? They were really happy with Gibson. Passer rating of 72 allowed into his coverage, but he's going to be 434 next year. No, on this front, no Sam Darnold under contract next year. They would have to re-sign him. Brock Purdy did go back in and after he tore his UCL last year, but he wasn't really able to throw. That was a problem. I appreciate you too. Jeffrey likes the 49ers having a franchise quarterback, a healthy franchise quarterback. That's really nice for San Francisco. Somebody who was able to put together a full season there of health. It happened with Garoppolo in 2019, and they made the Super Bowl as well. I think Shanahan's people managing skills are very impressive. I mean, and the best people manager in the building is John Lynch, and he deserves a lot of credit for how the 49ers have built this up. But Shanahan has been direct, and he's been, I mean, to involve John Lynch in this was a big win for him back in 2017. They have built a building where everybody will tell you that they feel that that culture is positive. The only way that the 49ers have been able to bounce back from so many devastating defeats here at the end of the season is because they have had good people leadership, good culture. I think that that's something that people don't talk about enough. But if you just objectively look at the results, they're damn good every single season. And then they've hit a wall at the end of these seasons due to, I mean, every year it's a little bit different, right? But I mean, 21, they're as injured as you could be. 22, they actually lost Purdy, so there was no chance there. They didn't get lucky in this last win. They didn't play their best football. They didn't get lucky. I mean, it was a slobber knocker. Balls on the ground a lot. The Chiefs weren't playing their best football either. It was two heavyweights going at it. Somebody was going to leave very disappointed. Ended up being the 49ers, not the Chiefs. And that says nothing, in my opinion, about the 49ers process. The 49ers process has been sound. You see, so many teams completely lose themselves after losing games half as tough as the 49ers have over the past 5 years. But this team has just kept on churning. And I think that does say something about the skills of Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch to keep a building together. How much longer is Mitchell's contract? One more year. Contract year for Elijah Mitchell. Thought he ran fairly well too this past game. And it was good to see him healthy down the stretch. He scored the big touchdown in the NFC Championship game. Ended up being the winning touchdown for the 49ers. Niners beating the Ravens in New Orleans next year. It's going to be poetic. I see what you're getting at here. The Ravens beat the 49ers in New Orleans in 2013, February 2013. So you're saying that the 49ers in February of, what year is it right now? Is it 2024? Holy crap, that went by quick. So February 2025, 12 years later, you think that the 49ers are going to be able to get the job done. That would be crazy. Too bad that Greg Roman is not still offensive coordinator in Baltimore. That'd really be wild. Do I believe the playoff Lamar is a thing? Well, I mean, it documented is a thing. He's been worse in the playoffs than he has been in the regular season. Now, the sample is obviously smaller, but so maybe over time he'll get better. But playoff defenses are tougher to go against. It's as simple as that. All right, this was our first offseason preview. Remember, re-sign, not resign. Re-sign, not resign. Everybody, thank you for watching. This might be a record length. Hour and 10 minutes. 70 minutes of me just sitting here talking. Thanks, everybody. We'll talk to you very soon.